Sometimes I get the question, such as, Jessica, is China also very cold in the winter? I was like, could be. China where? Because in the north, people can skate in the natural ice, while in the south, people can still swim in the sea. And when we listen to the weather forecast in a small country such as the Netherlands, and we notice that there are temperature difference from north and south. When we approach to a big country such as China, we sometimes forget the differences inside that country. So today, I would like to talk about the diversity in China. So I would like to emphasize that there is no one standard China or there's one standard Chinese. There's always differences inside China and between Chinese people, I mean. So the first question is, who are the Chinese people we're talking about? Yeah, and there are altogether 56 ethnic groups in China. One majority, that's Han people. More than 90% of Chinese population is Han group. So I'm from Han. And there are also another 55. And those 55 minority ethnic groups, and they have their own dressing, they have their own festivals, their own living habits, and they are very different from Han people. Well, actually, in the big cities, most of the Chinese people, you would say, just like me, because the people, even the minority people who live in the main cities, they are a bit Hanalized. Well, there are 56 ethnic groups in China. So the second question is, does all Chinese people speak Chinese? No. Of course, for the minority groups, some of the minority groups, they have their own language, but even within the Han group, there are different dialects. In China, there are generally about 10 different dialect groups. And within every dialect group, there are also differences. The official language is Mandarin. That's also the Chinese, the language most of the non-Chinese people are learning. That's the official language in newspaper and TV or radio stations, official situations, you always hear Mandarin. So Mandarin is the official language. But I don't speak Mandarin with my parents. We speak local dialects at home. So it also might be possible that you have learned Mandarin and you go to China, you think that, oh, well, what are people talking about? Why I don't understand at all? Is my Mandarin so poor? No, it's not your problem. People speaking dialects. Now, if you speak Mandarin, the standard Chinese, don't worry, people will all understand you perfectly. Okay, besides the different dialects, and also the different ethnic groups, and there are also other differences. So let's first have a look of the difference between North and South. We always say that eating is a very important culture for Chinese people, and eating is also a very big difference between the North and South. North people they eat a lot of food such as dumplings, noodles, or a kind of Chinese steamed bun, steamed bread, mantou. While in the South, people often eat rice with different dishes. That's because in the North, wheat is the main crops, while in the South, rice is more suitable to plant. So that's also gives a difference, like in the most important Chinese festival, Chinese New Year. And we read very often in the book or the literature that also Chinese people eat dumplings during the Chinese New Year Eve. Well, that's only actually for the northern people. And if I ask my friends who come from south, they have different tradition for their area, such as one told me that for their Chinese New Year Eve, they don't eat dumplings at all. They have to have one chicken dish. That's the most important tradition for their area. So eating is very different. When we're talking about eating, actually there are 8 different cuisines in China. They all have very different flavors. And for example, Zhejiang cuisine, which is near Shanghai area, is very famous for the sweetness, very sweet dishes. While in the southeast China, Sichuan area, that's where the pandas are, and there is very famous for their spicy food. So when you go to China, do try the different cuisines from different areas. This is about the difference from north and south and the food, and also there are differences between east and west. So look at here, if we draw a line between Tengchong and Heihe, and the territory will divide it into almost half and half. Of course, this line is imaginary, it's not a real line. But in this line, we divided China into 2 parts. For territory, almost half-half, while the population is very different. In this east part, it's 94%, while in the west it's only 6%. Of course, in the west there are mountains and desert which are not suitable for people to live, while in the east there are more natural resource. The natural environment is more suitable for people to live. And another reason is that east along the coastline, like all other countries, and around the coastline always have better transportation, it's always developed fast. So it's also the same in China. So there are more job opportunities in the West. They developed more fast. So that's why a lot of people also move to the East to looking for a better career, better job opportunities. So therefore, in the East is more populated. Where it also leads into the income differences. Well, here we can see that the blue part and the brown part. Blue part is which area the income is above the average income, while the brown part are below the average income. And while in the blue part, how darker the blue is, how high the income is. So here we can see the people with the highest income in China, they are in the area of the capital, of course, Beijing, and also in the Shanghai, Zhejiang, this area. And while in the West, we see a lot of area is in the color brown, and some of the parts are very brown. So how darker the brown is, how lower the income is. So that's also that's a very big difference for East and West. Of course, there are still also a lot of differences between the cities and countrysides. Very often when we think about China or we look at different maybe documentary about China, it's all about there's a lot of Chinese, it's very crowded and traffic jam, and maybe you also have seen in the rush hour in the metro, it's very crowded. Well, this is most of the time for the city transportation. So in the countryside, they most of the time they don't have metro, and even for the very remote countryside area, and you there is no public transportation. Probably you need to take a motorcycle, go to there, or maybe you need to use the local donkey cart, go to that countryside. So the transportation is very different between the city and the countryside. And the second is about the work. Now, in the countryside, people work in their fields. And now it's, of course, there's because like internet availability, and people also do other works, of course, in the countryside, but their main work is still their crops, their fields. While in city, you go to the different companies and you have hospitals, schools, and all different kinds of works. Education facility in the countryside is very far behind than the cities. While in the cities, the kids, they grow up in the city and they have better education resource. A lot of them, they are preparing to go to study abroad even at a very young age, which is financially impossible for the kids who grow up in the countryside. So this creates a very big difference for education. So thank you for watching and hope it is helpful, and we'll see you next time. 再见. Thank you.